Welcome back for the last session of this day. I am taking an opportunity to introduce the speaker of session 17, Dr. Vaibhav Hendre, and the topic is innovative teaching learning, a skill-based approach. Sir is the Deputy Director and Professor at G.H. Raisoni College of Engineering and Management. About academic qualification, Sir has completed his B from Savitribai Phule Pune University in ANTC, MTech from Batu, Lonere in ANTC, and PhD in Satyabama University, Chennai. About the teaching experience, he has 19 years of teaching experience. Sir is working as Deputy Director and Professor in ANTC at G.H. Raisoni College of Engineering and Management, Pune. Sir has worked as Head and Associate Professor in ANTC at Trinity College of Engineering and Research, Pune. Area of research interest: MIMO systems, information theory and coding, wireless communication, cognitive networks, digital communication, wireless networking. About the achievements: reviewer, board member of IEEE transaction on wireless communications, SCI indexed. Reviewer, board member of Spinger's Wireless Personal Communications Journal, SCI indexed. Reviewer, board member of Indonesian Journal of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science, Scopus indexed. Reviewer, board of member of Elsewhere, Alexandria Engineering Journal. Reviewer, board member of Third International Conference on Computing, Communication and Signal Processing, ICCASP 2018. Reviewer, board member of IEEE Global Conference on Wireless Computing and Networking, GCWCN 2014. With this introduction, I will request dear Hendre sir to guide.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the introduction. Before I start, let me share my screen. I hope it is visible.
Yes, sir, it is. Yes.
Thank you and very good afternoon to one and all present over here. I would like to first thank the organizers, Vidya Pratishthan's Kamal Nayan Bajaj Institute of Engineering and Technology, Baramati, for providing me this opportunity to interact with you all in this AICT IST refresher program on innovative teaching learning methods. A special thanks to Dr. Hivrekar sir and the principal Dr. Bichkar sir for this opportunity. So the topic of today's discussion is innovative teaching and learning, a skill-based approach. Prior to that, today I'm very happy that I'm delivering this session on National Technology Day. So I wish all the participants a happy Technology Day. We celebrate this National Technology Day on 11th May every year in the memory of the Pokhran nuclear test that is carried out in the year 1998 on the same day. So wish you a happy Technology Day. Now, before starting the session, we must ask this question for every session, that why this particular session has been there for all the faculty members who are participating in this particular session. Rather than this question also address why such kind of workshops are essential for all the faculty community for, which are based upon the innovative teaching learning, and why skills are most important for teacher as well as for the students, for learners the importance of the skill is very much important, and how you can impart these skills into the student, and how you can learn these skills as a teacher in order to improve or enrich your innovative teaching learning method. So this session is trying to address all these questions, innovative teaching learning methods from the skill-based approach. Prior to that, we must ask one simple question.
आयला कसं झालं? बंद केलं का इकडं?
Okay, whether I'm audible?
Yes, sir. Yes, you are audible.
Okay. So as we are working in educational institutes, specifically in engineering education institutes, we should ask this question to ourselves, that whether our stakeholders are happy with the current engineering education or with the current education system. A lot of thought might have been given in the earlier sessions about the, yes? Is it okay? I'm audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Okay. So being an education institute, we should look at to the stakeholder, and the most important stakeholder for us is our student. Whether students are happy with the current scenario of education institute, whether the parents who are investing in their students, are they happy? Whether the industry who is going to accept the students after completion of their degree, whether these people are happy. And lastly, a teacher who is trying to convey the knowledge, or who is trying to teach this knowledge to the students, whether he is happy. There's a big question mark on the happiness of all the stakeholders, and this question mark comes and we experience in last 1 year, particularly in the online mode of the teaching. In online mode of the teaching, no doubt student is the most happiest person in the world, because he is sitting at the home listening to your lectures, at least log into your lectures, don't know whether it is he is in the listening mode or he is just in log into your lecture. But he is again most happiest because his exams are conducted in the online mode. He is getting more and more good score, more than 80%, more than 90%. How much knowledge is earned, that is a big question mark, but he is happy because his results are good. He is sitting at home. His parents are also happy because they found that the student is at home helping them in their daily work and taking all the benefits of the working, the environment, their home environment at their comfort. But there's a big question from the industry, whether industry is going to accept such students who really learn in the online mode. And the way the online teaching is going on right now in all the education institute, whether these students are acceptable by industry. At present, if you forget about the online teaching, we understand that the acceptability rate in the industry, the employability rate in the industry is only 20%, which has been observed in many surveys, that only 20% students are employable to absorb in the industry. If I look at the fourth stakeholder, that is teacher, whether teacher is happy in the online mode, and the answer, definitely you will find out that he is not happy because he could not able to enjoy the offline classes environment in the online mode. So there is something missing in online teaching, something missing in the overall education system, and who can correct it? No doubt the most of the part is in the hands of the teacher. And if teacher decides, if he try to implement the innovative teaching learning methods to overcome all these drawbacks of the educational system, definitely the stakeholders become more and more happy in this scenario. So the role and responsibility is always on the teacher, and that is the reason in this particular workshop many sessions have been conducted on how to impart or how to develop the variety of innovative teaching learning skills amongst the teacher, amongst the educational system. And the national education policy is also more and more focused on the development of the teacher. Therefore, this session will try to focus two stakeholders, mainly the student and the teacher, and how the skill based learning and skill based teaching is most important to these two stakeholders, we will try to understand in this particular session. Now I'll begin this session with an opening remark that India's higher technical education system is on the threshold of major institutional reforms. And even in the previous session, Dr. Naik sir has nicely presented the highlights of the National Education Policy 2020, and we are witnessing now the same revolutionary changes in the educational system. Therefore, it is the right time to envision a bright future and create the desired ecosystem to develop the most important backbone of the educational system, that is you, me, and the all community as a teacher. So with this opening remark, this is a simple outline of my presentation. In initial part, I will just focus on the process of teaching, the focus on learner, some important innovative teaching learning process. I can understand that throughout this particular workshop, many speakers have highlighted on the innovations in the teaching learning process. So in short, I will just try to recall them, and then I'll focus on the teaching strategies of Generation Z student, because nowadays we are teaching to the students who are coming under Generation Z. So what is that Generation Z, and what teaching strategies we should adopt for Generation Z students, that we'll try to cover. Then some tools of online teaching. I understand that one special session has been delivered in this session on the tools on the online teaching, but a quick review that I will give you on the tools for the online teaching. And then my more focus will be on the importance of the skill development among the teachers and among the students, the variety of skills such as core skills, secondary skills, and my more intention is not on core and secondary skills, but on the technical skills which are required for the teacher and for the student, how the National Education Policy for skill development is supporting this skill enhancement in the teacher and the student. And typically in the end session, I will discuss one case study on teaching learning for skill enhancement of the teacher and the student, or the skill enhancement of the learner, being we are teacher, we are always in a process of learning, and we are also the learner. This case study which we have implemented in our institute in last 3 to 4 years, and we are getting very good results, just I would like to discuss here in the end of my session. So I'll begin with a quote from the Soren Kierkegaard, that instructions begins when you, the teacher, learn from the learner. Put yourself in his place so that you may understand what he learns and the way he understands it. I remember that I have attended one session by Dr. Ahuja, and in that session, somebody asked one question. The participant asked one question that the higher class students, like third and final year students, they're not interested in attending the online lectures. The question was not addressed in that particular session, but once again, that question somehow it links with this particular statement, that the way we are teaching in the online mode is really not acceptable or accepted by the students, and that is the reason the students are losing interest in the online session. We are not thinking, we are not putting ourselves in the place of the student, what they really want, whether we are delivering the contents that they really want. You understand that these students are quite smarter. We are calling them as a Generation Z student, and they're quite smarter than we all. They know the technologies, they are more techno savvy, and we should understand what is the requirement. If you could able to deliver in the way that what they require, what the learner want, then definitely they will take more and more interest in attending the lectures, attending the sessions which we are conducting in the online mode. So I'll use more brief on this particular aspect also in my session. This is a common thing, the phases of teaching, which is told by Philip Jackson, and we follow in our every daily routine all these aspects, where stage one is a pre-active stage. We try to fix up our goals, we decide the content, what we want to deliver, we decide the strategies in which we want to create a delivery in the classroom. In second stage, which is an interactive stage, which is called as actual delivery stage, we try to do the diagnosis of the learner. Now, when we are doing a classroom teaching, no doubt the diagnosis of the learner we can easily do by reading their faces. But in the online mode, unfortunately, we are missing this opportunity and we do not able to understand really what the learner is want and whether we are delivering the same contents to the learner or not. Then based upon the diagnosis of the learner, the actions and reactions, the modifications in the strategies that we are doing. And the last stage is a post-active stage where the appropriate testing devices, the feedback mechanisms, and the evaluation of the student based upon what we taught to them, that evaluation methodology we try to execute in post-active teaching, post-active stage. We required major changes in the strategies of all these three stages, looking at the current scenario of online teaching or the current scenario of engineering teaching. And that is the reason why this sort of workshops, they are going to help you to improve yourself on all these particular aspects. 4 P's are very important in teaching, as we all know that we start from prepare, then present, practice, and perform. And if we do all these particular things with an innovative way, we could able to achieve a good teaching in the end. So what is good teaching? One that is well planned and where activities are interrelated to each other. We are not going to teach them randomly any topic. There should be an interrelationship between the activities which we are conducting in our teaching session. It goes beyond the recall of information. Now the days are over where we want that the student should mug up certain thing and should reproduce it in the examination. The examination patterns also need to be changed drastically. The focus should be beyond the recall of the information, which is mentioned in the earlier session by Dr. Naik sir also, that we should focus on innovations, and that is something beyond the recall of information. One that provide learning experiences or situation that will ensure the understanding, application, and critical thinking. We should try to initiate the thought process of the student through our teaching. The conventional teaching where we are entering into the classroom, teaching for 50 to 55 minutes, asking few questions, and we are leaving the classrooms. The same thing will not happen in the future, because we need to focus a learner and how we can just initiate the thought process of the learner, how he can start doing the things on his own, on their own, based upon the concept that we are explaining in the class. So we need to give a focus more and more on the learner part. That is called as the good teaching. Now, why focus teaching on the learner? We understand that every learner has a different rates of acceptance, different styles of learning, variety of styles I have mentioned over here. Everybody is different. Some students are have a learning style of sensory, some are intuitive, some are visual, some are inductive, some are sequential or global. So these are a variety of learning styles, and everybody has different approach to the learning methodology. Some students, they are interested in watching the videos, online videos, and they're interested in the learning through the videos. Some are interested in the auditory systems. So everybody's approach towards learning is different. Everybody's pace of intellectual quotient is different. And based upon that, we usually try to classify the category of learner as slow learner, intermediate learner, and the fast learner. And our teaching strategy is different for slow learners. It should be different for the fast learners, and it should get an integrated phenomenon, because in the class we have slow learners as well as fast learners. We should develop a teaching strategy which is beneficial for all these categories of learners. Here I would like to highlight more on slow learners, because of the situations around us, we found that the numbers related to the slow learners is increasing in our class. Therefore, we need to look at what are the problems of the slow learners. Slow learners, they have low intelligence quotient. They have problem of language. We observe that in the first year class, many of the students, they are demanding that please teach us in the regional language. We don't understand English. That is a major issue. So there is a problem of language. There's a lack of prerequisite knowledge. They don't understand the concepts that we are teaching them. They're not being covered in the earlier classes in that manner in which they understood it. There's a lack of motivation for learning in cognitive domain. The learning environment at home, hostel and college is not good, and they could not able to learn in this particular environment. They have not defined their goals. There's no self-efficacy, low confidence levels, and the most important thing, which is that the mismatch between the teaching style of the teacher and their learning style. There is a great mismatch, and that is the reason they have been categorized in terms of slow learners. Another very important aspect, what we observed, is the deviation that influences the most. And this is not only the case of the student, it is the case of every person, teachers also, that we are now deviated due to the influences of the Facebook, social media. We are discussing many things on the social media, but I don't know the outcomes of what we are discussing is really beneficial to the community, to the society or not. No doubt there are certain groups which are also trying to create an environment which is conducive for the society. But the deviations, they are more, and the students, they are lacking with the intrinsic motivation towards learning because of these particular deviations. Now, we should also understand, and I hope this has been covered in the earlier session, that how the learners retain 10% by reading, 20% by hearing, 30% by seeing, 50% by seeing and hearing, 70% they say as they talk, and 90% of what they say as they do. Now, why the online lectures are not going to be effective? Because our focus is only on first 3-4 categories. We show them PPTs, we show them demonstrations, and they go on listening to us. So the retention has been restricted maximum up to 50%. But if you try to implement the teaching strategies where you can implement the activity-based learning, where students will do certain activity, they will present them, they will try to achieve, say as they talk, 70% retention will be happen. If you introduce the concepts of PBL, project-based learning, give some tasks to the students to do certain things, then definitely the retention, we can increase it to 90%, and their interest in attending our sessions will also go on increasing with that much level. So we need to adopt a teaching strategy which is more activity-based learning, which is more on project-based learning, so that the retention in the learners will be ensured to 70 to 90% of the level. Now, what are the domains of learning? 3 basic domains of the learning: cognitive learning, experiential learning, and affective learning. And for all these 3 domains, the most important focus on 3 aspects: delivery of the knowledge, imparting the skills, and developing the attitudes, developing a good human being, is the 3 outcomes of this particular 3 types of domain of learning. Here in my session, I'm focusing on the skill aspect of learning. This is a common teaching learning process, and we understand everybody, we are following this particular process. We do the planning, we do the implementation, we do the monitoring and regulation, we provide the facilities and the support, we do interact with the industry, and we take a feedback for the correction of this process through the audits and the feedbacks. That is what a general philosophy of the teaching learning process. Now, we need to think beyond this, the general convention, general teaching learning approach as a blended teaching learning approach. We are habitual with chalk and talk method. No doubt there are certain benefits of chalk and talk method. But beyond that, as I mentioned, we should focus on the hands-on training, the practical demos, because that it will try to increase the retention in the learners till 20 to 30%, because that is through the visualization of the things. Then project-based learning with mini projects, with the internships, still more retention we can increase. The student should be able to carry out the critical analysis. For that purpose, we should conduct the open houses, where the student will demonstrate their project and the expert will try to evaluate and will share their experiences. The experts, definitely they should be from industry or from the research organization, so that there will be a good interaction between what the students are doing and what the people are implementing in the industry or in the research organizations. Participation in exhibitions, definitely that is going to give you a more exposure to the student. And the most important thing in the teaching learning process is the appreciation of creativity. The student should be focused on creativity in developing the creative things, the creative products, the creative concepts, and we should give appreciation in the evaluation process for the creativity, a special appreciation. So that way it will trying to give you a blended mode of teaching learning approach. Now, these are some of the innovative approaches. I understand that many of us, we are following these innovative approaches. We are implementing, or we have already implemented. Most of them, they are conventionals. We do project-based learning. I understand one good session on project-based learning has been conducted here. Access to NPTEL Swayam portal, access to the knowledge database, the interactions with the alumni and industry, faculty development program for enhancing our knowledge and skills, value-added programs we conducted for awareness with the current trends, some modeling and simulation tools now we are imparting as in our teaching process, the advanced knowledge related to the advanced equipment and the software, and the review of the complete material, that all coming together as the innovative approaches in the teaching, and somewhere we are imparting them in our conventional teaching also. I have tried to categorize this innovative teaching learning process into 4 different types of learning. Technology enhanced learning, where the more focus is on learning the advanced technology through the MOOCs, through the simulation tools, or through the virtual lab, online learning, or nowadays with the online mode, video capturing system. Video capturing system is not only going to give you the facility to the student, but it is also a self-correction mode for a teacher, and that's why we should prefer the video capturing system for delivering our sessions. Project-based learning. One example I should quote it here beyond what it is listed over here: industry supported project, research projects, mini project, sponsor project, project internship. But beyond that, why can't we convert some of the subjects in our curriculum which are really application oriented? Just an example, if I just take an example from electronics and telecommunication, the subjects such as microcontroller and applications, or microprocessor, or a software subject where you're teaching a programming language. What we try to do in our institute, we remove their theory classes, we converted the whole subject into the practical domain. Then our faculties, they have found out the variety of projects related to that particular subject, and the subject has been taught by doing that particular project by the student in the laboratory. So such kind of methodologies which will try to give the students more practical knowledge, we can impart through the project-based learning. Active learning, peer teaching. Most of the colleges, most of the departments, they are also imparting the concept of peer teaching, where students, so the senior students, they're teaching to the junior students. This is definitely going to increase the retention, as I mentioned in the earlier slide, that when the students will teach the same concept to their juniors, there's a more clarity, not only into the junior students, but it is also created into the students who are teaching in the peer teaching mode. Experiential learning through workshops, through industrial visits, through internships, and to the industry-based training. Where a teacher, we are lagging, we have very less interaction with the industry. Our interaction is restricted only towards industrial visits or site visits. We should try to get a good industry live project from the industry. But to get an industry live project from the industry, we must first develop that capability among ourselves. We should develop such skills which are required to take an industry live project. Then we will get a good exposure for the industrial live project the industry interaction will happen, and the benefit will also goes to the student. These are some of the conventional strategies. Since very old days, we are following Z2A approach in teaching, where we are focusing first explaining the application part, and then based upon that application, we are trying to explain the concept. What, why, and how is a very old concept. Before beginning your any session, you should ask these questions to your student, that why he want to learn this particular concept, and the same I asked in my first session. And if you got a satisfied answer to what and why, then you focus on how to understand that particular concept or how to understand that particular technology. 50/10 approach is a very common approach in the conventional classroom teaching, peer teaching, activity-based learning. These are all conventional strategies. Now we need to think something beyond these conventional strategies. And our focus should be on Generation Z. What is Generation Z? All the students who have born after 1998, they are being referred as Generation Z student. How they're different than the earlier generations? Because since their childhood, they try to understand the variety of technologies. They are tech savvy. They are using all the advanced technology devices, which we might not have used in our childhood. They are digital natives. These generations spend 15.4 hours per week on their smartphones, on internet. They're interactive. They are active on the social media. They are multitaskers. They are doing so many things at one place. They are cautious about their relationship. They are educated. They are advanced in the technology. They know everything. But there are certain drawbacks in the tech Generation Z, that they are less focused. Because of all the advantages of this technology, their focus span, their attention span, it is very, very less. And the study says that their attention span is 8 seconds, as less as possible. So you can imagine, if we are trying to give a conventional 60-minute lecture to a Generation Z student, definitely they are not going to attend your session with that attention span, because the attention span has been reduced to very small. So why can't we try to divide our sessions into very small sessions, a session of 10 minutes, 15 minutes, easily they can grasp, their attention span will increase, and they will try to attend your sessions. So a philosophical change we required in the delivery system. We are trying to deliver the online lectures in the same way how we are delivering it into the classroom sessions. That is not at all required in the online. You should think that how we can increase the attention span of the student in the online mode when he is not in the classroom. He is sitting at his home, and if you ask to make the video on in the online mode for a student, you will find out he is lying on his bed. Sometimes he is wandering in his room, or outside the room. Somewhere he is sitting in his agro farm. So their situations are different, and we are trying to teaching them in that situation. They are not in the classroom. Their attention span is less. So we need to find out some solutions so that they will be more attentive. We should use technology to bring their attention to our class. We should give them multitask so that they could be engaged in the classroom. So these needs we have to understand for this next generation, Generation Z students. And we need to adopt certain teaching strategies for Generation Z. Few of them, just I try to mention it over here. Generation Z students like social media. They like Facebook, WhatsApp, Instagram, YouTube. Why can't we use the same social media as a learning platform for them? We should teach them. We should give some task on their social media. We should ask them to see certain YouTube videos so that their learning potential will go on enhancing. So that social media usage you can do in your teaching strategy. You can provide individualized instruction and give a thought for adaptive learning. You give the individual task. Okay, so and so student, you have to do this particular small project, maybe in a group or maybe without group, as an individual. You should think that students are now not interested in writing the assignment on the paper. You should think digital in all assignments, in all assessment and activities. You use all the digital platforms for giving the assignments, for assessing them on their assignments, and give some digital activities on the digital platforms. Break the content into short segments. As I already mentioned, 60 minutes lecture is not at all acceptable by this generation Z students. Split them into small and small, 10 to 15 minutes. You also hear such lectures on the professional online platforms such as Udemy, Coursera, or YouTube. You found that the lecture duration is not more than 10-15 minutes. You can easily learn anytime and then start working on that particular session. Make information graphical, because visualization is the most important tool in teaching. We usually use it, but you should make more information in the graphical way, in the visualization mode. Rethink how you communicate. You cannot start your lecture in the online mode blindly and go on speaking for 60 minutes. You need to communicate in such a way that the attention span of the student will always remain in your lecture. You should be relevant, and you should provide or promote the adaptive learning. So these are some of the teaching strategies we need to adopt for the generation Z student. Next is tools for online teaching. I hope it might be covered in the earlier session, but just for the knowledge purpose, I will mention their names. You can find their details by searching on the Google. Edmodo is an educational platform for the teachers, where you can design your curriculum, you can design, record your lectures, and you can float it to the students. Students will enroll, will listen to your lectures, and you can also give some live assignments on the digital platform for the students. Nearpod is one more, where you can synchronize the student devices and you do the evaluation responses. I remember there is one question asked in Dr. Ahuja sir's session, that how the evaluation in online is really need to be modified. So this is one platform which you can use for the evaluation purpose, where you can synchronize the student devices and carry out their evaluation on the fly. ClassKick is another platform which you can use. This is a free app. It gives you a platform to provide high quality and real-time feedback mechanism for what the sessions that you are conducting. And we are already aware and might be using this platform such as Google Classroom for assignment submission and for even the examination evaluation. It's a very good platform. Zoom, WebEx, Skype, Adobe Connect, and Discord, we are already started using it since last 1 year for the online teaching. Apart from teaching, we need to evaluate the student, and for evaluation purpose, quiz and activity tools. There are a variety of online tools available for quiz and activity. Some of the names I have mentioned over here: the Socrative, the Kahoot, the Quizlet, WordWall, or Formative, Verso, Triventi. You can just look into the website www.growthengineering.co.uk, where you will find out 64 amazing free online tools for teacher, and some of them I have just highlighted over here. So I observe that the Kahoot and Socrative, they are very famous tools. Even in the engineering students across the globe, they are using for the quiz and the activity kind of assignments. So you can focus on such sort of online tools. Just I was talking about the international platforms. Nowadays, many international platforms are available for teaching and learning process. And in last pandemic duration, I also tried for launching one of the course on Udemy platform. I have just launched a course on MATLAB basics and programming, an in-depth guide for beginners on Udemy platform. I try to learn so many things. When you are trying to put your course at international platform and on an online platform, there are a variety of challenges a teacher should understand. So I appeal all the faculty members who are attending in this particular workshop that you also try to put your at least single one online course on such international platform. We are habitual on putting our YouTube videos, but YouTube videos will not get a true feedback from the listeners. But these platforms, they are giving the certification. So the certification platforms definitely would give a good opportunity for a teacher to learn how to create an online course. You'll find out in this course, this is a total course of 12.5 hours, but my single lecture is not more than 12 to 15 minutes. And every lecture is followed by certain assignments. And once the students will complete that assignments, they will go for the next lecture. So there's a more practice the students are doing in this mode, and the similar kind of concept, if we impart it in our online teaching mode, instead of conducting a 60 minutes lecture, completing the whole unit, and then taking the test, we could divide our curriculum into very small slots, 10 to 15-minute duration, immediately certain assignments, and the evaluation based upon that assignments. This strategy will definitely engage the students into the classroom and will truly give certain outcome-oriented education. So you can find out the more details of this course or similar course on the Udemy platform. You will find out the course has been organized in such a way that every lecture is followed by the assignment evaluation process, and the students learn more over there. I'm happy that more than students from more than 17 countries are now the part of this particular course, and they are enjoying, they are asking the questions, and we also understand what sort of questions at international level students are asking to us related to our course. So it's a great exposure and great opportunity for every faculty to launch such sort of courses on the international platform. Now I'm coming down to the important topic for which this particular session is there, a skill-based approach in innovative teaching learning process or innovative teaching learning pedagogy. Now, all the phenomenon, it lies on the outcomes of the engineering education for an engineering graduate, and we understand there are three prime outcomes of the engineering graduate. One is the placement, second is the higher study, and third is the entrepreneurship. And we understand that our more and more focus is on the first part. If you look at the percentage of the engineering graduated students, 80 to 85 students, they are preferring on the placement, 10-15 students, they're focusing on the higher studies, and only 5% student or even less than 5% students, their focus is on entrepreneurship. And this is what the saddest part, which is also highlighted by Dr. Naik sir in his earlier session, that our very less focus is on entrepreneurship. So in order to achieve this particular outcome, we always know that for placement, for job, eligibility is most important. The academic eligibility nowadays, many students are satisfying because of the autonomy, because of the online teaching method, or because of the relative grading sort of concepts. But where we are lagging, still we are lagging in imparting the skills among the student for getting a better job, a good communication skill, good aptitude, reasoning, quantitative skill, and definitely the technical skill is lagging, where they should focus more in order to get good placement. Same lies for higher studies, variety of exams which we conduct, which the students are facing at the national and international level. And there also, if they have a good knowledge earned through the skills, they could able to perform better. Definitely, to become an entrepreneur, you must have a variety of skills, the skills related to the developing the new ideas, nurturing these new ideas, create a good communication skill for developing your business, and then you can get a good success in the entrepreneurship. So somehow the things, all these three outcomes, they are somehow related to the enhancement of the skills, the development of the skills. So what is a skill development in short? To add something more to the abilities that we have and to move it a step ahead so as to keep on developing. And the skill development is definitely very important to compete in the advanced world, not for the student, but for all our faculty members also. If you look at the necessity of skill development, three prime importance: survival of the fittest, compete by developing skill to compete with the other advanced persons, to come at the higher level to achieve the success, and leave the greediness far aside to develop the nation, the other people coming in the field. So this is what the necessity of skill development. We should be always in the advanced world, should learn the advanced technologies so that we could able to impart them amongst the student also. This is what the diagram I have directly taken from the National Education Policy for the Skill Development, where the National Education Policy is focusing on three aspects of the skill development: basic and higher cognitive aspect, technical and vocational skills, and social and behavioral skills. And definitely they are overlapping with each other. When you overlap basic and higher cognitive skills with technical and vocational skills, you could able to develop programming skills, monitoring, designing, troubleshooting, and quality control sort of skills. If you look at the overlap of social and behavioral with technical and vocational, you could able to develop the problem solving skill, organizational skill, and the overlap between basic and social, the skills related to self-control, decision making, communication skill, and at the center point, you will find out the vision, the resilience, leadership, and the motivational skills. In the same document, they try to just give the percentage weightage of all these three categories of skills as far as foundation skills are concerned, employability skills are concerned, and entrepreneurship skills are concerned. If you look at for the foundation skill, more and more weightage is on basic and higher cognitive skills. If you look at the employability skill, almost equal weightage is been given on all these three aspects. And if you look at the entrepreneurship skills, more weightage is given on social and behavioral, and then technical and vocational, and a little less weightage on basic and higher cognitive skill. Now, if I look at from the teaching learning process, we understand that the institutes such as IIT, NIT, or good eminent institutes in India, their more and more focus is on foundational skills. That's why the teaching curriculum is been designed and imparted by looking at to the basic and higher cognitive skills, because they believe that if the foundational skills are good, the level of the students who are entering in IITs and NITs will definitely enhance the skills for the application. But the same strategy we cannot implement in the engineering institutes where we are working, because the quality of the students who are entering in such engineering institutes, they don't have very much basic knowledge. And if you are focusing only on the foundational skills, they may not able to expose themselves into the technical and vocational skills. What is expected, the most important expected outcome from the students who are entering in the average engineering institutes is they are entering, they're looking for the employability skills. So we need to give equal weightage in our curriculum for all these three categories of skills. We should impart technical skills, we should impart social and behavioral skills in the equal manner, and basic and higher cognitive skills. Therefore, our curriculum should support the equal importance to all these particular skills in order to get a better employability of the students in the engineering institute. As I mentioned, skills we can classify into three categories: core skills, secondary skills, and technical skills. I will not discuss this particular point in more detail here because we are already aware about these core skills and the secondary skills. Right from the schooling, we are learning or imparting the linguistic skills, the imagination skill, the story writing skill, the secondary skills such as designing, pitching, time management. We are all aware, but they are definitely required being a teacher in our teaching and learning strategy. My focus will be discussing a case study more on how we could identify the technical skills for our progress. So these are just an overview of the personal core skill required. A student as well as a teacher must have a leadership skill, must have a good communication skill, must have a good problem solving skill, a decision making, presentation, management, and writing skills. Because if a teacher is having, we can impart it into the students. I will not go through the details of what is leadership and what is communication and what are the other skills, but we know that the most important skill what we must impart into the student is a problem solving skill. And for that purpose, we should able to identify the problems based upon what the teaching methodology that we are putting, what the concepts that we are teaching. Students should able to identify the problems in the domain in which they are working. They must know the cause for identifying this problem. They must find out the alternative solutions, the solutions which are not conventional, something beyond the conventional solution. And apart from all these alternatives, they should able to select the best solution for the implementation purpose in the benefit of in the societal benefit of that problem. So this particular process flow we should able to implement for every subject. We should give a thought of problem solving skills. Decision making and presentation skills, no doubt they must be, they are definitely very important from both the perspective of the student as well as teacher. Management skills, writing skills, nowadays they are also important in the evaluation process of all the placement agencies. The students got evaluated for management and writing skills. We should impart these skills somewhere in our curriculum. And now the most important part is the technical skills what we require for engineering career. I'm going to discuss one case study in my session where how we are going to identify these technical skills, how we can embed them into the curriculum, how a teacher individual can identify a technical skill in his own field and how he can enhance. So what is the total methodology of imparting the technical skills in the engineering education, that I will definitely discuss with one of the case study over here. Till this point, I am able to deliver you the importance of skill development in the engineering education. Now we will go to the implementation part of how we can use the skill development to make our teaching learning process more innovative. Technical skills, definitely they are giving you the technical knowledge, the skills related to computers, electronics, or the software sort of skills, skills related to the technology, skills related to the mathematical modeling of the problem, skill related to the development of a product from what you learn, skills related to the system design and the processing of what the concept that you have designed or you have implemented. So all these skills somewhere we need to impart in the technical skill part. Before going to the case study, a brief overview of national policy of skill development given by the Prime Minister or the National Council of Skill Development. There are 4 different aspects mentioned in the national policy of National Council on Skill Development. One is been implemented by MOLE or DGENT with the help of organizations such as CTS, NCVT. NCVT is the National Council for Vocational Training, and the target is to train 100 million people by 2020. And they have designed so many online courses in order to enhance the skills of all, not only the engineers, but for all common mans, right from the workers in the industry towards the engineers who are working in the industry. Another platform is NSDC, that is National Skill Development Council, and you will find out many online courses have been defined by NSDC. How NSDC is defining the courses? They're defining the courses sectors wise, and that's why they define the SSCs. SSCs are sector skill councils, and the purpose of these SSCs is to provide the facilitation with the collaborations with the industry, has an advocacy, LMIS, and the funding. They also provide the funding for such kind of skill development programs. MHRD is also holding a major share in the skill training, and their target is to give a skill to the 50 million people by 2022, and their collaborations are with the vocational schools and the higher education. For the higher education, you understand that since last year, AICT is also promoting to impart the vocational training courses in your organization, in your institutes, in order to give the skill training not only to the engineering students, but to the community workers working in the industry. Apart from that, there are 17 ministries and the departments, they have their own program on the skill enhancement. That is what just an overview of national policy on skill development. The details might be covered in the earlier session, and that's why I have just tried to give you a brief, the organizations who are working in the skill development. Now I'm coming down to the case study of skill development, and for another half an hour, mostly I will be just talking about this case study. This is a real case study which we have imparted in the institute since the last 3 to 4 years, and we are getting good results of skill development. Many of the institutes might be also imparting such similar kind of things. Now, in order to develop or in order to impart the skills into the student, we believe that the skills should be first acquired by the teacher. Then and then only we could able to impart them into the students. We cannot conduct the skill enhancement courses all the time from the industry persons. Industry persons, they are quite busy and they are not easily ready to come and deliver you every time these courses. So what the strategy we adopt, we try to first just organize the skill development courses for the faculty members. We try to identify the gaps, what the faculties are, what the skills the faculties are already knowing, and what the skills they newly want to impart. So we have identified that particular skills, and initially we try to organize certain courses from the industry persons to enhance their skills. And then these faculties, they have started imparting the same skills to the student. What is the process we follow that I'm trying to discuss in this particular case study? To understand this case study, we have implemented this particular concept across all our departments. But for a case study, I'm just taking an example of single department, the Department of Electronics and Telecommunication Engineering. Try to understand the methodology. Rest of the things, if you are from some other department, it is equally applicable to you. You can work on the similar background, and you can also try to develop the strategies for your own department. Now, for this department, how we started? We understand we need to focus on outcome-based education. So we need to first focus on what are the outcomes of engineering graduate. What are the career paths after completing the undergraduate education in electronics and telecommunication engineering? That career paths first we have identified. So these are a variety of career paths which are available after the successful completion of their undergraduate study in electronics and telecommunication engineering. And major industries, they have identified this particular path. If you look at these paths, if you are from electronics and telecommunication, you will find out that most of these paths, they are in line with what the curriculum that we are teaching to them. But still, students are not able to get the job because our focus in delivering the curriculum is only teaching them the concepts, giving them the conceptual knowledge, not the applied knowledge. So, and to give that applied knowledge, the advanced skills which are running in the industry, we must first acquire, and then we can impart them into our curriculum. So we have identified all these career paths, and once we have identified these career paths, we have observed that where our students will get a job. What are the career opportunities? The career opportunities in the public sector, career opportunities in the government, in the private sector. In some of the students will go for research and higher education, and their opportunities in the other sectors are also there. So in every sector, we have identified the major recruiters. All these recruiters, we have not only identified, but we have visited their sites and try to understand what sort of job requirements these people are having, which job profiles they need. For that job profile, what is the basic requirement, primary qualification criteria in terms of knowledge, in terms of skills that we have identified for each and every public sector company. Similarly, we also identified the companies which are in the private sector in all domains. We try to understand the requirements of telecommunication industry, the requirements of consumer electronics, the requirements of networking industry, the requirements of all sort of industries which are going to give the career opportunity for the student working in this area. For every industry, we visited their sites, the career sale of their that particular company. We understood what are the job profiles for the freshers. Once we understand the job profile, what skills they required for that particular job profile, and we have created an exhaustive list of all the skills required by each and every industry working in this particular field. We did it for all branches, all sectors which are trying to give the job opportunity for that particular student. Once we did this, we have also focused on higher education, identified the requirements of research organizations for research study. We also understand what sort of qualifying examinations are there for higher education, how students should prepare for that particular part. So on every aspect, we did an exhaustive, I can say, a literature survey on this particular area. Then we devise a curriculum gap identification process. Every institute is doing this particular process, but here our focus was more and more on industry feedback, their needs from the engineer, and the feedback from the alumni who are already working, who are from our institute, who have learned in our institute with the curriculum that we have designed, and they know the lacunas of our curriculum, what the problems they have faced. We have collected data from at least 10 to 15 industries from every sector, 10 to 15 alumni working in that particular sector at various positions. We take this feedback, and after collection of this feedback, we have also seen the information available on the internet, what the institutes of national importance are doing for their student, and based upon that, we have tried to identify the curriculum gap what we have in our institute. We are an autonomous institute. We have a freedom of designing our curriculum, and that's why while designing our own curriculum, this complete process of curriculum gap analysis have really helped a lot. If you are still working in an affiliated institute, you are not able to design your curriculum on your own, but still you can do this exhaustive analysis to find out what is the exact curriculum gap. And if you can design the courses, if you can give a delivery beyond the content of your curriculum to overcome this gap, definitely a good outcome we could expect from your students, and there is a good enhancement of the skills we can carry out for a teacher. I hope I'm audible, because this is just a one-way communication going on.
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, thank you. So based upon this survey, what we have carried out, we just try to find out the 5 different career paths for an electronics and telecommunication engineering, which is focusing, which is based upon whatever the feedback that we have received, that this ENTC engineer has an opportunity in 5 different areas. Most of the opportunities still lies in software and IT industry, automation and robotics, embedded, telecommunication and networking, VLSI design, and we have tried to find out what are the latest trends and technologies that are required in all these particular domains by getting the feedback from industry and alumni. Now, we have just created a very large list of such latest trends in each and every area. Few of them just I have tried to mention it here. If the student want to work in embedded system design and IoT, the student should acquire these many skills. In this industry, these many skills, like all 5 areas which we have identified, we try to figure out which are the important skills if the student is having or in their curriculum, or if the student acquired, they will get a good opportunity in the industry. Similarly for software and IT industry. So this list we have created, no doubt some of these skills, they're already in the curriculum. Some of them, they are not in the curriculum. So we need to make a proper planning of imparting these skills into the student across the 3 years or 4 years engineering curriculum. Once we identified these latest trends and technologies, our next task is what? Is to map it with the curriculum. So 5 areas that we have identified. So I have taken the first area and I have enlisted what are the subjects that we are teaching in our curriculum right from the first year to the final year related to that particular area. I have figured out all these subjects. What are the contents in that particular subject, the present status that we have figured it out. And then we have identified the curriculum gap, that these are the trends or the skills which are required in the industry, but we are not teaching them in our regular curriculum. And that gap, we can utilize it either to modify our curriculum or to give certain thing beyond the curriculum to the students so that the skill development will happen in the truly sense. In the initial part, we got a quite big list of the curriculum gaps for each and every area that we have mentioned. I've just taken a sample case over here, but you can get a very big list of variety of, because there is no limit on just mentioning the skills over here. All of these skills we can't impart to the student, but few of them, if you could able to do it, definitely the student, it will help the students to be in touch with the latest technology. So just as a sample, we have identified 19 to 20 different skills that an ENTC engineer should acquire in order to get a good opportunity in all these 5 areas which we have targeted. Similar analysis, we did it for all the engineering branches, and we have identified for every branch 19 to 20 variety of skills that are most important as a technical skill for the student. Now the next task was what? We need to deliver, we need to put these skills into our curriculum, which is a very, very difficult task, because with the current scenario, with the availability of the teachers, we need to first achieve the target of completing our syllabus, completing whatever the syllabus we have defined. Students are also not ready to accept something beyond the syllabus, but we need to create awareness among the student, the necessity of the skill sets, what we can impart for them. Then we try to map these skill sets with the application area, that if you want to get a job in IoT industry like smart factory, then these are the skills required for that particular application area. Out of these skills, some of the skills the students are acquiring through their curriculum, but some of the skills we need to give them beyond curriculum. The list is also quite big, and it is not expected that every student should acquire all the skills. But if there are 10 skills required for IoT application area, if the students could acquire 4 from the curriculum, 3-4 additional to that, 5 to 6 skills that will ensure it's his or her job into that particular application area. That way, we try to map the 20 identified skills with the variety of application area. Our next task was focusing on, now we want to impart these skills to the student. It's very difficult to give something beyond the curriculum to the student. For that purpose, we have to organize the skill development program. We need to invite the experts from the industry. The huge cost involves in this particular process. Sometimes we do it also, but we ask this cost from the student, and students are not ready to pay a single money for any sort of additional training. This is what the current scenario in all engineering engineering education systems. That is the reason, if you want to find out the solution for that, we have to make all these particular skill development as a part of the curriculum, and our faculty should be able to teach them in the curriculum itself, so that all these problems we could able to solve. But if the faculty want to deliver this, first thing it is required is that faculty should acquire this particular skill, and for that purpose we spend a lot of money on faculty members so that they can acquire the latest skills in their domain. So we just created one table where we have written the name of the faculty, we have identified in which area the faculty is working or delivering, is teaching, and then what skills presently they have. They are expert in MATLAB, they are expert in C++, or whatever the skills we have enlisted 20 skills. How many skills they really know? We have tried to figure it out. And then we also ask the faculty members that what are the skills you require in your area and you are interested to learn. So we have just listed faculty wise all the skills that faculty is required. Then at the organization level, we are running many engineering colleges. So we have just taken together all the faculty members who are expert in, whose application area is, let us say, communication field. And we have organized a skill development course specifically from industry for all these faculty members. And we train them on the latest skills in the industry. So the skill upgradation of the faculty has achieved. Now, this is what our case scenario. If you are individual, if you are working in the individual engineering college, or the college is not supporting much in such activity, you can decide on your own that in which area you are working, what skill set you know, what you are required to acquire. Find out a suitable online course, a course from the industry person, join that course and try to upgrade yourself. So this is very much required, because unless and until we are not upgrading ourselves, we are not able to impart the same thing towards students. Students are very smart. They are also learning from variety of online media, and they are always ahead of us. We need to compete with them, and to compete with them, we also need to upgrade ourselves in the all latest skills over there. Just to give an example, I was just interacting in last month with one of second year IT student of my college. And I came to know that a second year IT student is quite master in designing the many apps. He's a good app designer. He was a good developer in the website. He's a good website developer. Now, which I even know, even many of the faculties in that department are not good expert in that particular part. But we can interact with the students. We can create a forum of a faculty as well as students, a learning forum where we can interact the knowledge. He has told me so many softwares which I can learn just to enhance my knowledge. So this interaction should happen for the enhancement of the skills of both the students and faculties. Once we have trained these faculties, now faculties are well equipped with the new skills. Now we need to enhance these skills to the student. So that this point I have already covered, that we have conducted many effective teaching skill programs, so master trainer programs. We have also asked the faculties to register on all international platforms such as DataCamp, GitHub, who is also providing the qualitative or the application-based courses. What is the most important, the thing that every teacher should know, irrespective of the department, are they must know all these latest technologies: artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, data science, blockchain. These are all the latest technologies, and in few years there won't be a single identity of mechanical, civil, electronics, computer. All this branch will merge together, and every branch application is going to implement such kind of advanced technologies. So our civil engineer faculty, our mechanical engineering faculty should also acquire, or our mathematics faculty should also learn the concepts of artificial intelligence, machine learning, not to the very hard level of the programming, but at least they could able to apply these concepts into their own application part. So this particular skill enhancement courses that we have conducted, all our faculty members, we have trained them for AI and machine learning, irrespective of the domain, so that they will be in touch with the latest technology. After doing this portion, the most important part, what we did, now teachers are well equipped, skills are been identified, as well as everything has been ready. Now the time to give it to the student. So whatever the 20 skills we have identified, we mapped them with the syllabus, and we come to know that these 8 to 10 skills, they are being covered in my syllabus, and remaining 8 to 10 skills, I need to give it to the student. I cannot give all the skills together to the student. So we have devised a mechanism in which every semester a student will learn at least 1 or 2 courses of its interest. And we made these courses in line with our curriculum. We made them as a part of our curriculum. We have given certain credits. Being an autonomous institute, we have a flexibility for that. So we have awarded a credit to this particular course, and that course becomes a mandatory course for that particular student. Like in second year, first term, the student interested to go into the software industry will learn C, C++ in more depth, though it is the part of the curriculum, in more depth from the industry perspective. Student interested in automation industry will learn PLC programming, a live course from the industry person. In next term, we will create the verticals based upon his area of interest. Or in second year level, we will try to give them the knowledge, the skills required by all basic industries, the programming skills, the application development sort of skills at the second year level, and then slowly at the third year level, some more advanced skills and very advanced skills at the final year. So if student decide that from second year to final year within 3 years, at least 2 courses in every semester, you could understand that 2 multiplied by how many semesters? 2 plus 2, 4 plus 2, 6. So 6 into 2, 12 skills a student can acquire during this particular 3 years of academics. I have taken from second year. No doubt similar analysis you can do in the first year also. Now our first year students learning Python and their applications. They are also learning something related to the biomedical courses, something related to the artificial intelligence, machine learning, right from the first year. There was a big discussion going on in our board of studies when we decided to introduce Python or machine learning or artificial intelligence at the first year engineering. I will tell you one example that one of the key industry person from Accenture was the part of our board of studies or our academic council. He shared his experience that why the academicians are opposing to put such subjects at the first year level. Because the CBSE board has carried out one experiment just 1 or 2 years back. They tried to teach Python for class 7 and class 8 students, even class 6 students. And this particular training has been conducted by well-known industries, and the evaluation is also carried out by the industry experts. And their outcome shows that a class 5 student can also understand the Python programming and its applications to the artificial intelligence and machine learning. Not into that much depth, but to the introductory part. And we understand there are so many softwares, or what I can say, the software such as Byju's, you might have heard, the learning platform. Now Byju's are teaching coding to the school students, right? The small kids, they are also doing coding now. If they are doing codings, they are developing their app, they are developing their website at school levels. Why you're opposing in putting the subjects such as artificial intelligence, machine learning at first year of engineering? And that has given a motivation to we in our autonomous institute to impart these subjects in the first year curriculum, so that a quite good background got created for the student. And then student have tried to acquire more and more skills in the successive years from second year to final year, so that once they will enter into the final year, they are at least equipped with 10 to 12 skills, and your product is ready to absorb into the industry. You discuss on the industry platform for the recruiters. We also got a feedback from many recruiters that what they want from the student, they want a good communication and behavioral skill from the student. They want that students should be able to adopt new things, and they should have a mastery on at least one or two technical skills that is sufficient to get a job. And if student will acquire these particular skills throughout their curriculum, throughout their engineering part, definitely it will be a good ready product to absorb into the industry. And at the same time, the teacher is also helping the student to acquire this particular skills, and teacher will also get upgraded in this particular domain. So what is the outcome of all this process? Definitely a very good job placement, very good internships. I will tell you, AICTE has made mandatory the internship program in the engineering curriculum. Being an autonomous institute, we have imparted a 6-month mandatory internship program in our curriculum, and in last 2 years, all our 100% students of final year BTech has done a 6-month mandatory internship in very reputed industries, and many of the students got good jobs through their internship. So internship is very much required because students will get an exposure of live working in the industry, the culture of the industry, the way the industry people are working. Many students have just raised the complaint that the nature of the work is too exhaustive, but they must get acquainted with such sort of culture. And if you start it right from your engineering education, then definitely the students will get a good opportunity. In our curriculum, there's a 2-week social internship, there is a 4-week industry internship mandatory, and there is a 6-month mandatory internship in the final year where they need to do one industry live project in the industry. There's always debate. I heard that so many engineering student, industry is not ready to accept our student, how the students will get internship. But in last 2 years, when working on this particular phenomenon, we come to know that industries are easily ready to accept the students for the internship. Rather, they are behind us that we require 10 students for internship in this particular industry. And I will confidently say that our students are performing very well in many reputed industries for the internship purpose. So there is no such, there is a rumor that industry is not putting hand just to collaborate with the academia. No, they are doing it. Only they want the good students, they want the students should perform in a very good way, which will try to satisfy the requirements over there. And many of them, they are also thinking from entrepreneurship point of view. We have also embedded some skills which are required for the entrepreneurship as a part of our curriculum, and the students who are interested in these skills, they can register for that particular course, and they can develop that particular thing through the innovation cell right from the second year of their engineering education. So the skill development is definitely going to give you the overall increase in all sort of outcomes we expected from the engineering education career. Apart from this, what is the most important outcome we expect as a teacher, that is quite nicely explained in this particular figure. I have taken it from some of the website that if you do all this particular process, your all teachers will have very good skill sets which are required for 21st century. At least 4 to 5 skills every teacher is having. The thinking pedagogy of the teacher will change once they will acquire the advanced skills. They have they would get equipped with very good information management system. They will become a creative and start publishing. The research is also an integral part of our career. So they will focus more and more on the research. They will build a new paradigm, the new teaching methodologies, the new courses, which are something beyond our regular curriculum, the regular teaching methodology. They will try to create good learning environments, and with that way, the development of the teacher will happen along with the development of the student, what I believe through this particular case. So that is the reason why I say that the skill development approach is the most important approach in the innovative teaching learning paradigm. And we need to focus, we being a teacher, need to focus more and more on this. Usually we teach that subject so many years, one subject so many years, one faculty is teaching, but even we don't think that what innovation we can bring in the curriculum of that particular subject. Something beyond. We know for NBA purpose, for the accreditation purpose, we just put one innovative experiment in our lab manual. That is the last experiment. All the experiments in the curriculum we teach, and then one innovative experiment last. And that is just for the sake of purpose, which to satisfy the requirements of the accreditations. Why can't we bring innovation in each and every experiment which is there in the curriculum? We could teach them in the innovative way. We could teach them in the virtual platform. And all these concepts, we can make the learning in the activity-based mode, in the PBL mode, with the skill-based mode, so that the enhancement, the imparting of the skills will happen to the student as well as to the teacher. I hope I try to bring some insight regarding the skill development. What else is required to be done by a teacher, which many of us, we are missing? Most of the times we work individual. When we are doing a research, we do individual research. We are not ready to share our research with somebody else. That is the most drawback of Indian education system, what I feel, as far as the research is concerned. Because we have always feared that somebody will steal my research. No, nobody is going to steal your research if you are doing your research thoroughly with the great intentions. But if you try to create the special team of teachers, professors, which are coming together on one particular topic, on one particular area, you could share your thoughts. Definitely, it will develop you as a teacher, you as a community, and you will be able to nurture the human values, and you could be able to develop the leaders for the tomorrow. You should come, you should get together in a special team, a special task. If I'm working in wireless communication, I will create a network of 20 people working in wireless communication. They can share their own research ideas, the research topics, their even teaching methodologies. There's nothing wrong in sharing it. If they share, the other people will get the benefit of it, and he will try to implement it in his own way. It's not what I can say, the cheating or stealing of the idea. Everybody's idea, everybody can implement by the different way. We should make an advisory board from the industry people, from the good academicians, which can impart the knowledge and the skills by means of advice and advocacy to check the malpractice in the education profession. We understand there are variety of malpractices going on, and we being a teacher, we are not opposing it. By coming in a special team, we should focus on such malpractices. Study circles to discuss variety of topics and enhancing self-learning, and this will give you a good reform in the education system to serve the society. So to conclude my session, I will just give one quote by the Albert Einstein: education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think, and this training will happen if you try to take an approach of learning from the skill-based approach, so definitely the things will happen what is expected by Albert Einstein. So that's all from my side. Thank you very much. I know that I'm in between you and your lunch because it's high time, and I feel that the participants are reduced little bit. But before I conclude, one last thing, you just take a moment and write down one idea, what you understood through this presentation, or which skill you identified for implementing or to acquiring, and whatever the idea that you learn, try to implement in a class you will be teaching in the near future. I feel that it is the most important outcome I will receive through this particular session, and the organizers will also receive the outcome of this particular course. So thank you very much. If you would like to discuss with any of the points that I have covered, or would like to ask any query, the session is open for the queries. You can also put your thoughts from your end. If I have missed something else, you can also add in the benefit of the community present over here. The session is open for discussion. If you have any queries, you may raise.
The participant just have to unmute and talk. Meanwhile, sir, let us have a photo session. All
Yes,
are
sir.
requested to start the videos. Please start the videos.
Can I something?
Yes, madam.
Hello.
Yes, madam.
First of all, very nice session, sir. Very informative session.
Thank you.
As I am also from electronics background, so these days, we all know that electronics teachers, electronics branch is really facing problem, as the students from ENTC as well as computer and IT, they get placements in the IT industry and computer industry only.
Yes.
So my question regarding admission point of view is that if some students ask, this era is about machine learning, artificial intelligence, then blockchain. So why should we go to electronics? Even when we complete BENTC, we are going to get a job in IT industry only.
Yes, madam. Now, this is just a specific part that you asked for electronics. That's why I would like to ask, give the answer from the electronics perspective. Though the students require software skills to go into the software industry, but if you look at the application project nowadays, earlier software industry was just facilitating to the industry which is running outside the India. They are just providing the software solutions to the big projects which are running at the global level. Nowadays, the software industry is also changed. They are designing their whole product. And when the part comes for the product development, not only the software is required, a lot of requirement is there from the hardware perspective. If you go and ask the recruiter from the IT industry, nowadays they want software knowledge as well as the hardware knowledge. And this hardware knowledge we are giving for the electronics student. And if you just ask from the recruiter point of view, the recruiters will prefer a guy which is having both hardware as well as software knowledge for the recruitment if the industry is application based industry. So, and all industries nowadays, they are focusing on the application based. They are designing their own product, they're selling their own product, and there's a great need of electronics engineering. This way you can answer this particular question. But overall, if I look at, as I mentioned, and even Dr. Naik sir also mentioned that after a few years, there is no identity of single branch. All they need to merge together. Every branch of engineer, they require the knowledge of software, irrespective of whatever the fundamental branch, they need to go on acquiring it.
Okay, sir.
I hope I could able to satisfy you.
Yes, sir. Actually, this thought will take time to percolate.
Yes.
It takes some years, but till that time we have to struggle.
Yes, definitely.
in the same regard, SPP has initiated the honor minor curriculum
Yes, yes.
on this academy.
I just forgot to tell you, but this honor minor program we are implementing in since last 4 years, and I have not talked about the fast learners, but all the fast learners which are there, our institute, they have registered for honor and minor program, and they are really getting a good benefit. Most of the students, they are completing their degree in 3.5 years, which is allowed in autonomous institute. So because they are all advanced learners.
யாரா இது உங்க ஊர்ல மாப்பிள்ளை யார் இது
Vaibhav sir.
Yes, yes, sir.
Yes, please unmute yourself.
One thing I want to clear here. Good
Good
afternoon,
sir, loudly.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The session is very good. It is informative. One thing I want to clear here. Kalyani asked you a question. Kalyani. Hello, Kalyani.
Sir, I'm there.
He is also the alumni of our SPPM. He is our senior one. He is also the product of Malegaon Engineering College.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Yes.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So I think, sir, I think still most of our participants have not started their videos, so it is kind request. Meanwhile, I go for vote of thanks so that we'll be having our foods earlier. I kind request to start on the videos so that snaps can be taken. Many thanks, dear Vaibhav sir, for this nice lecture. You have elaborated the importance of blended teaching learning method, and it is really need of ours and should be the attitude of all the teachers. Also, you talked about the 4 P's. Then definitely there is distribution among the learners as slow, intermediate, and fast, and accordingly you elaborated the distribution of retention with figures, teaching strategies for Generation Z, online teaching, cues, activity tools are immense, useful, and effective. You have told a number of such options for us which are going to be very much useful for us. Entire presentation has been very good. You also express outcomes of the engineering education's skill requirements, career opportunities for the learners regarding higher studies, employability, and so many things. Latest trends and technologies also. So an excellent part of the education system is that the best competitors of the teachers are the students themselves. And after all, teaching is the best method of learning. And it is very, already we know that you are having a course on a Udemy platform relating to MATLAB, and it is very nice to know that there are students among 17 countries who have been benefited with this course. So all the best to you, and definitely your presentation is going to be immense useful. Even though it is very close to lunch, there are most of the participants who have been actively giving the feedback in the chat box, you can see, and the demand of most of the participants is it will be nice if you share the PPT of your presentation.
Sure.
Thanks a lot, sir. Yuregar sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Hendra sir, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much, sir, for providing this opportunity to interact with all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you.